Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this new series where we will learn about and explore characters we love and hate. We will be discussing the characters' life, their successes and failures, and everything in between. If you enjoyed this series, then please do consider leaving a like on the video, subscribe by hitting the red button below to help grow the channel, and let me know in the comments who you might like for us to consider in the next episode. Today's subject is Rhaegar Targaryen, also known as the Last Dragon or the Last Prince of Dragonstone. Rhaegar was King Aerys II and his sister Queen Rhaegar's firstborn son. Following the Targaryens' traditional incestuous tradition of brother marrying sister, Rhaegar was born from the pure Valyrian bloodline of House Targaryen. Although his exploits in later life would be famed, as a child Rhaegar was not deemed to be extraordinary by any means. He was in fact considered to be a solitary child who enjoyed the playing of his harp and reading the large tomes and tales of Westeros. It is said upon reading one particular scroll that Rhaegar's outlook on life changed. He approached the Red Keep's Master-at-Arms of the time, the famed knight from House Darry, Sir Willem Darry, and told him that I will require sword and armour. It seems that I must be a warrior. From then on, Rhaegar became a very accomplished fighter, competing in many tournaments and being knighted by the time he turned the age of 17. Rhaegar's performance and prowess brought faith to the rest of the realm, because they saw that the heir to the Iron Throne was someone exceptional, and they would therefore only have to endure the reign of the maddening King Aerys' rule. But they could look forward to his son taking over control of Westeros when the time came. King Aerys' growing madness caused great conflict in Westeros, but this was not just for Westeros but also for Rhaegar himself, who had to balance following his king while watching the madness take over his father and ensuring that he did not act against him. As a young man, Rhaegar was considered one of the most handsome, if not the most handsome man in all of Westeros. He was considered a brave, kind and wise knight who was expected to bring in a new era of promise and success for all of Westeros. With no sisters for the young prince to marry, as per Targaryen tradition, Rhaegar would have to marry outside of the family, and as such, King Aerys wished for Rhaegar to find a wife with Valyrian blood. However, no such match for Rhaegar was found. Instead, many thought that Tywin Lannister, the long-standing Hand of the King of nearly 20 years and chief advisor for King Aerys, would secure a closer bond with House Targaryen, securing this bond by way of a marriage of Rhaegar Targaryen and Tywin's daughter, Cersei Lannister. Cersei was herself entirely infatuated with the famed prince, with his silver gold hair and dark lilac eyes. She certainly considered him to be breathtakingly handsome. However, much to the court and the rest of Westeros' surprise, King Aerys denied this marriage proposal, and there was to be no unification for Tywin Lannister. Instead, the king spurned his hand, which resulted in Tywin, the man who had kept the realm together for 20 years in peace and prosperity, in spite of the king's madness, to suffer even further the wrath of the Mad King in later events. In spite of Tywin's loyal service, Aerys deemed that Tywin was overstepping his place and was still a servant of the king, and should not deem to elevate his family further to that of the blood of the dragon. Instead, Aerys agreed to a different marriage, He agreed to marry Rhaegar and a princess of Dawn, Elia Martell. Elia Martell was a distant cousin to the Targaryen line due to centuries of intermarriage from centuries ago. Rhaegar's marriage was by all accounts deemed to be a happy and loving marriage, which bore 2 children for the Prince of Dragonstone. Elia Martell, however, was a sickly woman, but she still managed to bear him 2 children, a son named Aegon and a daughter named Rhaenys. Rhaegar was so proud of his newborn son that he believed that Aegon was the prince who was promised, which had previously been said to be Rhaegar himself when he was born. Years after the birth of Rhaegar's children, a great tournament was to be held at the seat of Harrenhal. Lord Walter Wen announced this tourney and said that it would rival any other in the realm. Rumours were suggested that the tournament was in fact organised by Prince Rhaegar himself, as a cover to discuss with the great lords of the realm a way to remove his father, King Aerys, from the Iron Throne. However, the King's spy master, a eunuch by the name of Lord Varys, alerted the king, which caused Aerys to ensure that he would be personally present at the tournament, and this put an end to any conversations of removing the king. At this tournament, Aerys unleashed his final revenge and humiliation over Tywin by appointing his son Jaime Lannister to the King's Guard in order to rob Tywin of his heir to Casterly Rock. Instead, Jaime would be so close to the Mad King that some considered this move a strategic and glorified hostage situation. Following this appointment, Tywin resigned as Hand, and the realm now slid into the grasp of the Mad King solely. With discussions of removing the king now being completely destroyed by his presence, instead it now turned to a proper tournament, and Prince Rhaegar competed. Not only did he compete, but he dominated his opponents. He beat famed knights such as Sir Arthur Dayne and Sir Barristan Selmy of the Kingsguard. Rhaegar earned ultimate victory in the tournament at Harrenhal, and as part of his win, he was to grant the winner's wreath and present it to the Queen of Love and Beauty of the tournament. But to the realm's shock, Rhaegar passed by his wife, Princess Elia of Dawn, and instead lay the wreath upon the lap of Lyanna Stark. It is said that at the feast of the tournament, Rhaegar played a song on his harp that was so beautiful it moved Lyanna Stark to tears. But upon laying the wreath, the crowds fell silent as Rhaegar laid this wreath down to Lyanna, as she was already betrothed to another, none other than Robert Baratheon. It is said that Eddard Stark recalled this moment in Westerosi history as when all the smiles died. It is then that the realm of Westeros descends into serious problems. A year after the tournament at Harrenhal, there is dispute as to whether Lyanna went willingly or was allegedly kidnapped by Prince Rhaegar. It is then that they fled to Dorne, residing in a small keep in the Red Mountains that Rhaegar named the Tower of Joy. Here, Rhaegar used his position as Prince of Dragonstone and heir to the Iron Throne to arrange for the High Septon, the spiritual leader of the Faith of the Seven, to annul his marriage to Princess Elia of Dawn, and then personally oversee his marriage to Lyanna Stark on the same day. It is this action that is attributed to have sparked the rebellion known as Robert's Rebellion. Following Lyanna and Rhaegar's marriage, Lyanna's brother Brandon Stark, the then heir to the current Lord of Winterfell, Rickard Stark, travelled to King's Landing and approached the Mad King to demand his sister be returned to him and travel back to Winterfell. It is at this point that the Mad King's madness can clearly be seen to be displayed, as he has Brandon imprisoned in the Red Keep. Following Brandon's imprisonment, the Lord Paramount of the North himself, Rickard Stark, goes south to ransom his son for his freedom. However, once again Aerys imprisons Rickard. While having both the Lord Paramount of the North and his son and heir in his jail, the Mad King had Rickard burned alive with wildfire, whilst Brandon was forced to watch. Brandon was also killed. These events in culmination triggered Robert's rebellion. Aerys meanwhile demanded that Jon Arryn, the Lord Paramount of the Vale, send him the heads of Eddard Stark, the heir now of the North, and Robert Baratheon. Jon Arryn, however, refused this. He refused the Mad King's request and took up arms with Robert and Eddard, seeing the tyrannical king's madness ensue. And this war to overthrow the tyranny of the Mad King was also to overthrow the Targaryen bloodline. Rhaegar, meanwhile, was called back to court by the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Sir Gerald Hightower, to lead the Targaryen armies, which would be supported by a further 10,000 Dornish troops, against the rebels led by Robert Baratheon, Eddard Stark and Jon Arryn. Upon Rhaegar's return, he took command of the king's forces as he led them to meet Robert in battle. It is said on the way that 2 members of the Kingsguard went with Rhaegar, whilst Jaime Lannister remained in the Red Keep to protect the king. Rhaegar confided in one of those Kingsguard members, Sir Barristan Selmy, and stated that once they have won the war, there would be many changes at court, suggesting that Rhaegar intended to remove the Mad King, his father, from power, and sought to potentially restore peace to Westeros. Eventually, Rhaegar met Robert Baratheon in battle during the Battle of the Trident, and it was here that the 2 warriors fought in what became a legendary duel in the rivers of the Trident. During this hours-long duel, Rhaegar managed to wound Robert, and in particular his hand, taking him out of combat for the rest of the war. However, it was Robert Baratheon and his ferocious warhammer that struck the mortal blow to the Prince of Dragonstone, apparently causing the rubies on his armour to explode into the river, which earned it the nickname the Ruby Ford. It is said that while Rhaegar lay dying in the stream, soldiers scrambled to search for these rubies, and Rhaegar the Prince, with so much promise, died with Lyanna Stark's name on his lips. This brought the end to the famed prince's life. Following Rhaegar's death, the Targaryen forces were lost, as they had primarily been fighting for Rhaegar himself, and not for Aerys the Mad King. And so, as we know, Robert won his rebellion, and took the crown and the Iron Throne. As for Rhaegar's children, Aegon and Rhaenys, they were both killed by Sir Gregor Clegane under the orders of Lord Tywin Lannister, finally executing his revenge for the slights that the Mad King had made against him and his family. The children's mother was also present, and she was raped and then killed by the Mountain. Eventually, after King's Landing was sacked by the victors, Eddard Stark went to the Tower of Joy with his men to face Sir Arthur Dayne and Sir Gerald Hightower, who had been ordered by Rhaegar personally to keep Lyanna safe. Eddard and his troops faced the Kingsguardsmen, and Eddard was the only one to survive, only to find that his sister was dying in childbirth. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now have to give you a spoiler alert. If you do not want a major spoil to the story, then I suggest you watch no more. And I have to say, you have been warned, friends. As Lyanna dies, she informs her brother Eddard of her marriage to Rhaegar, and the child's name was to be Aegon Targaryen. Lyanna ensures and persuades Eddard that he must look after the boy, as he is the legitimate heir to the Iron Throne, as Rhaegar's only lawful son. Eddard claimed the boy and kept his nephew as his bastard child, Jon Snow. And the rest of the tale is for another character in the Who Is series. But this, ladies and gentlemen, brings an end to Rhaegar Targaryen's life, and has been Who Is Rhaegar Targaryen. Do you like him as a character? Do you think, had he survived the battle with Robert, he would have brought peace to the Seven Kingdoms? And let me know who you might like to see in the next episode of Who Is. It does not have to be a Game of Thrones character, it can be any fictional character you are interested in. But for the next couple of weeks, we will be continuing with Game of Thrones characters, but I'll be keeping a running list of interesting characters in fiction to explore further. In the meantime, friends, I hope you've all enjoyed this episode. If you have, then please do consider leaving a like on the video. This would be very much appreciated. Subscribe to help grow the channel and encourage new content to be released. You will also become an awesome person immediately for doing this. And ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all in another episode of Who Is.